Yeah, so today's panel's discussions around sort of upper funnel metrics, upper funnel activity vis-a-vis the programmatic piece. And we have three people here today who have got a vast experience in that area. So before we jump into discussion, I'll let them just introduce themselves briefly.
All right, thanks. Hey, I'm Adam Heimlich. I'm the head of Programmatic at Horizon Media. That department's called HX, and Horizon is the biggest independent media buyer in America.
Hey, I'm Dominic Joseph. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Captify. We use search behaviors to power display, mobile, and video advertising and insights. We take about 15 billion searches per month, and we use those to run campaigns, DR and brand campaigns for agencies and around 450 different brands around the world.
Hey everyone, Tyler Peets from Cadjon, which is IPG's ad tech unit. I'm a vice president of programmatic strategy there.
Adam, I didn't know that. Largest independent media buyer in the US.
Horizon, yeah. So yeah, we compete with the holding companies, but
Okay.
about their size.
So obviously you do a lot of brand buying.
Yeah, it's mostly brand.
So let's talk about your experience about programmatic and how it helps, informs your sort of top of the funnel stuff. So just give you sort of an overview of how you approach that and what the strategy looks like.
Yeah, Brian gave a good lead in talking about some of the measurement capabilities and things that are possible in Trade Desk, who is HX's primary partner. A lot of times within agencies, branding is thought of as the stuff you can't measure, and that really is the distinguishing point between DR and branding. But increasingly, you can measure brand effects and can measure them definitively. So it starts to look a lot more like DR, and that's you could see the needle move. You could go out to move the needle, then you could check if it moved and see that effect. And on the other hand, DR, when you start to do lift tests, is something that just became possible with cross-device tracking. I should say became possible again. Since the advent of mobile, it was impossible. Now with cross-device tracking, you could do lift tests in digital again. You see that most DR, the way we've been doing it, is not incremental. And to make DR incremental, you actually have to make it a lot more like branding. So that's something that HX has brought to our DR customers. So you kind of see this meeting in the middle where high impact, viewable ads, things that you would expect drive recall and purchase intent really do. And when you marry that to the precision of programmatic, right, you have something new under the sun. We call it mid-funnel because that's how it's easy to sell.
Mid-funnel, I like that. And that transition happened over the last couple of years. I mean, obviously we started off in the DR, very much the DR focus for programmatic, bottom of the funnel, but the transition to mid-funnel sounds interesting.
Where I sit, it's happening right now. There are things that became possible in the last year, and there's starting to be a lot more client interest that make it something that's happening right now. But I have a peculiar slice, probably pretty close to Tyler's, working with big national brands. There's a whole other world.
And Dom, you're obviously working with a lot of big brands now in the US. So talk your experience of sort of bringing that programmatic now into sort of top of the funnel stuff.
Well, I mean, I think programmatic on its own is just a buying mechanism. It's just a tool for transparency control and optimized workflow automation. So programmatic on its own is nothing. It's the ability to profile audiences, and programmatic enables you to bring in data-driven audiences and profile audiences into an arena where you can marry that with creative and create a much more rich user experience that also kind of works upper funnel, but then also can fuel your lower funnel strategies.
And Tyler, obviously, you work on both sides of the fence, DR and the sort of branding side. What's the strategy from your perspective, how you moved to the mid-funnel, as Adam said?
Sure. So I think the fundamental difference is that direct response advertising is very transactional. And if you look at the way that, or has historically been very transactional, and if you look at the way that programmatic proliferated as a buying mechanism, it was based on addressing cookies. You're retargeting someone that hit a product page. If you're a fly-by-night e-commerce company, you're fine doing that. You know that you're retargeting that person and then you're observing a transaction. I think the biggest difference for brands is that they're ultimately looking to invest their media dollars in brand equity that will create sustainable dividends for them over time. And so, especially when you're talking about a consumer brand that has to realize the return on that investment so many times over the course of a year in order to really get their money back from it, it makes it more challenging. But many of the things that Dom and Adam said, I think ring true for me as well. It's about understanding how one phase of the funnel feeds into the next, being able to isolate and measure the causality of your campaign in terms of getting people to remember your brand and then to consider your brand and then ultimately to sustainably transact with your brand is the way it should be done.
So Adam, where are you seeing this sort of transition happen? Is it mostly sort of online video to start with? Then obviously the big narrative for a lot of the ad tech companies, and Brian was a good example of that, is they're looking at programmatic TV. So is sort of online video initially the sweet spot for this type of thing, and with obviously TV being the next one?
Yeah, it is, but not for any good reason. It's because that's the asset that brand advertisers have. They have video. They also have social assets, which is kind of interesting, and usually they have some crappy banners. But I think what's more interesting than what we could do with video, which is good, is how much we could do with banners because of the scale of the programmatic marketplace and the ability to optimize frequency to the results of a brand study. I think a lot of the interesting results are with creative that's not very good or interesting at all. And it's really a result of programmatic scale. And as that changes, and Brian made good reference to new ad formats, right, native formats that look good in mobile, I think you start to get something really exciting. So we're talking a lot to clients about using their social assets, which are designed to speak to certain customers in certain moments in the programmatic landscape. And I think that married with the precision and frequency control we have in programmatic was where you start to see very controlled lift.
Do you see TV being the sort of the breaking point? Like there's going to be once it becomes addressable, or it is addressable at the minute in some senses, but once it becomes truly addressable, then there's going to be a flood of money there, programmatic money.
Well, we don't need that much money to double the size of our pool, right? Their budgets are so enormous and so wasteful. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years. I will see 5 or 10% of TV budgets move over. That's what we're starting to see, and that doubles programmatic. Yeah. And with the streaming behavior, right? So TVs become more like devices, as we were seeing. So it becomes very continuous from where we're standing, but very disruptive from where the TV people are standing, and they have a lot more power and a lot more money. So it remains to be seen.
Dom, is the TV thing going to be the big thing next year for programmatic branding? I mean, you see the conversations already happening, and it's funny. Adam saying it's the actual media companies pushing this as opposed to the buy side. They're trying to as a defense mechanism because the fragmentation of the landscape. But is that the big opportunity next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still very early days, and there's obviously a huge prediction for growth in certainly in addressable TV. Programmatic TV is already happening. I mean, I think what Brian touched on in the last panel, or his keynote actually, which is quite interesting, which is talking about being able to create a user ID from an OTT box, right? So that creates the ability to then tie the whole thing together on a user level. Bring your audiences which are highly profiled, and then sort of look into the passion points and look into the need points and the moments that you're talking about that users express through attaching them to data and then having a wider creative experience across all formats.
It becomes a data play effectively. Being able to sort of use the user data.
Yeah, and then of course, since you have a user ID on a user, whether it's coming from a set-top box or whether it's coming from a desktop or a cookie or whatever it might be, you have the ability to then drive insights in real time, rather than having a look at a panel and having to wait for the panel results. And then if you can drive insights in real time to then see what emotions and what interests users are expressing around a brand and products and trends in the market, etc., then you can then tailor the creative and adapt the marketing accordingly.
So it becomes a feedback loop, effectively. Good analytics from campaigns, and you'll be able to feed that back into the creative process.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We do it for various brands. There's you can do it either for targeting or simply just to inform nuances within the creative as well. So we run campaigns for someone like Emirates, where we work with the agency to they've identified two different subsets of consumers. They've got work travelers and affluent parents, and then we'll look at the search behaviors for each of those two different audience groups and tailor the creative accordingly. But then also delve into the passion points of those two different audience groups throughout the campaign, and then you can evolve it and then push the consumers down the funnel and push them down towards the DR strategies.
And Tyler, do you see that as the opportunity as well? When you talk to your creatives, I mean, I know obviously the buyers and creatives don't talk that often, but is there an opportunity then to kind of inform that process and really make that more effective, the creative effective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I certainly agree with what Adam said, which is just that we're more or less enabling what what advertisers have always done, which is to create 30-second spots for branding and just find different ways to force them on people, right? So I think the opportunity is in understanding how different creative formats comport with the organic user experience where they're being surfaced, and then looking at how effective they are. I don't think that anyone that's playing a game on their phone would agree that having that randomly interrupted by a 30-second spot is native to that experience, whereas it feels very relatively native, I guess, to watching live television. So I think as we see a migration from the traditional TV ecosystem, we'll continue to see some of those players in that space, whether it's the MVPDs or the actual networks themselves, offer more options for being able to more precisely address the viewers in their ecosystem. But
you think the experience will become much more customized? It's interesting you raised that. King.com obviously tried to run a media business on their games, and it was a monumental disaster, and they pulled it pretty much as soon as they got feedback from users, we're going to stop using this game. So now they've come up with an option to have reward videos. So basically you go to a level, you can't get past the level, you can get some credits from your friends, or you can pay for it, or you can watch this 30-second spot. I mean, is that how you see these as you say, conforming to the ecosystem that they're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one way. It's certainly about not pissing people off, which is, I think, part of the the incentivized model. But it's also about it feeling less like a jarring departure from what you came there to do, and just being more seamless with what your experience is. If you're on a culinary site and there's a way to create that inception moment where, oh, maybe I should have orange juice with my bacon and eggs, or whatever that looks like. I think those are the opportunities that we need to identify, and then use all the power that we have in a programmatic world to be able to better target those ads and make sure that we can create dynamic experiences wherever those users are.
So Adam, you obviously talked to your clients quite a bit about this. I mean, when they see you come in with these opportunities around programmatic branding, if you will, where do they see what's the sort of use case for them? What's the advantage for them? And they kind of lick their lips, going, "Finally, my brand budget is addressable." Is it efficiency? Is it sort of targeting? I mean, what are the sort of the use cases for them?
Well, what I try to convince them is that they're actually going to make their business more money. Just to make it really simple, but to get a little more complicated, like you could come to the programmatic marketplace with a business strategy and execute it. Like if your business strategy is to sell to moms who shop in supermarkets, right? We can do that directly. You don't have to worry about media partners or inventory. We could just find that audience and measure their lift in purchase intent, and then we could see it on the purchase side and close the loop. And if you don't know what your business strategy is, we can find out. We could start really broadly and say, oh, do moms like this product, or is it more dads or grandmas? So those are really two clear paths that follow from having a conception of the business strategy, like the market, like who is this product meant for, and how do we make money. But you didn't ask me the barrier, but the barrier actually is that in marketing conversations, there often isn't a very clear sense of business strategy.
So you spend a lot of time going, well, what's your end goal? If you spend $1 million on a TV campaign, is it to sell more cars, or is it? Do you have
right.
I mean, that's interesting because
So which cars to whom?
Yeah, exactly. And do you sit down and tie those sales? Like, I mean, the agencies sometimes are blind to the effect of the campaigns themselves. How many cars did you sell? What metrics are we sort of optimizing?
I try to spend my time with clients who know what they're trying to sell and to whom, because that's where you get future investment. If a client can't answer that, then they're probably just dabbling in programmatic, or at least its most exciting capabilities aren't relevant.
Yeah, Dom, you having similar conversations with some of your clients? Like obviously, branding campaigns. Where what's the immediate effect if I basically take the Guardian over for a day? I mean, am I going to sell more tickets, or how do you sort of loop that together?
Well, I mean, everything we're doing is user-led. So it's we have insights on every single user, and that is passed back to the client, and that's whether it's audience metrics, whether it's brand uplift, whether it is market trends, whether it is how you're sitting against your competition, etc. So that's real-time information that can be passed back and then leveraged by the agency and the brand. I think what I found coming here from the UK to the US has been quite interesting, working with major brands over here. There seems to be quite a few of the brands I'm speaking to. They say to me, yeah, that's great, but we've got a Millward Brown study for this whole year, And there's a bunch
what's
of media planners sitting in a room who basically they can't do anything and they can't actually influence what's going to happen. So
there's a report out, and the brands basically followed the Millwall Board brand report, and they said, So what did it say this year? What's the big takeaway?
People hate the brand.
Spend with someone else, right?
Yeah.
Annoying ads.
So that's quite interesting. So I think we've come here, and we're and I think there's plenty of other solutions in the market as well that I'm sure you guys are using every day to get closer to real-time information that can actually
Search is a good way to get into that conversation, because you could say, well, look, forget about your demo. Here's what people are doing now, right? Here's what they do when they look for this category, right? So then now you have a segmentation that's real.
Yeah, absolutely. You understand straight away whether somebody. I mean, you can delve into with search behaviors. You can delve into everything through brand attributes, how someone's really feeling about a brand. You can use it to measure the effectiveness of other activity around the activity that you're running on the campaign as well, because everything's happening in real time. Social is a fantastic way of understanding very quickly someone's a brand impact of some sort of advertising message or some sort of marketing message. But search gives us this longer running view of consumers in the market and following the customer journey beyond that platform. Because also all the search platforms have a walled garden, user IDs. You can't continue with that process. So search data on its own is actually a fantastic method to follow that user journey together. But we're here to break away from these old archaic measurement studies, and there are new technologies now.
But that's what you're up against, though. I mean, still TV's measured on panel-based basis. It's particularly in the UK. I mean, the US is probably similar. But you're against those sort of own metrics. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you're looking at, sometimes we're against, but they've taken a panel study of 20,000 people and aggregated it up to the whole country. I mean, that's
yeah. I think there's
Nielsen's model.
Yeah, it is. I think there's one of the challenges is that anything that's kind of built into the traditional process of planning against a market, trying to figure out which attitudes or affinities they might have, and then going to market and buying against a Nielsen demo, right? Trying to retrofit that with something where the system where you can observe endless amounts of data to understand, first off, who can buy this, and then who are they, and work your way back from there. It's just an entirely different schema. So I think that's one of the challenges, particularly with branding, when you're trying to convince someone, well, hey, it doesn't matter if we reach them on a football site or a baseball site, they're still going to buy your sugared soft drink. They go, oh, no, well, we did our panel, and we know that they only go on baseball sites. And so that's a challenging thing to work out of, I think.
You find you're evangelizing quite a lot about, the new opportunities, effectively. And
the culture around branding, that's how I was just referring to, is much bigger than our entire industry. It's older and it's more powerful and deeper, and it's not going to crumble.
Yeah. Is that one of the big ones, the measurement issue, where, you say, if you spend 10 million on this programmatic TV campaign or video, they want to justify it. I mean, is that one of your biggest struggles, trying to justify the measurement piece?
At the risk of sounding like I'm insulting my clients, if you've never been accountable for sales, that's not an attractive proposition to suddenly become accountable for them.
Yeah, the transparency tax.
I mean, that's the end result. That's what we're trying to get here, basically.
Yeah, so some are aggressive about that, but there are categories. I don't know. I'll pick on entertainment, where the person who picks the ad in entertainment is like an artiste. Like, this is the right ad. And if you're going to bring metrics into that conversation, you're really threatening that person's job. Yeah.
Dom, how do you sort of work on the measurement piece? I mean, I'm quite interested. I mean, you run campaigns, you run branding campaigns for your clients. What's sort of, how do you
we completely ignore the studies that those guys are looking at, and we provide our own ones, essentially. No, but I mean,
we create your own studies.
We do, absolutely, yeah. And it's if you're speaking to a DR team, they're like, they just want numbers. They're not too fussed about it. But if you're talking to a brand team, they're trying to understand more about their audience. They're trying to understand more about the brand, how it's sitting within the landscape that it's within, and trying to measure more. If you can provide that in a way that is tangible and clear and not overcomplicated. I mean, there is, it's also important as well, I think, looking at the data ourselves, that there's a lot of crap out there that, I'm sure that you guys have issues with. We're talking about how data is actually a really good way to measure beyond a lot of these panel surveys and stuff, but there's also a lot of terrible data out there. There's a lot of very commoditized.
And you have to spend a lot to get to significance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, and it's really about just identifying really good data sources where you can really extract a lot of, we have so much at our fingertips, but we spend most of our time, it actually takes a whole team of people just to pick out actually what are the really meaningful parts. And it's all very well us going to you guys with all these insights and a full menu of insights and range, right? But actually, a lot of time there's only one or two things that really that the brand or the team is particularly interested in. So we have to work closely with the agencies to make sure that what we're providing is actually what they want, because otherwise we can just flood them with a load of crap they're not really interested in.
I mean, measurement again is a big sort of crux for.
Yeah, I could say so much on this. I think we've all spent so much time trying to get our clients and our partners to just consider data broadly. But you can certainly swing too far in the other direction, fixate on the wrong things. So probably the easiest example for everyone to accept is click-through rate, right? I think as an industry, we've kind of swung away from click-through rate being the be-all, end-all, and all you need to do is apply that same concept to anything else. I mean, if I clicked on a banner, does that mean that I did or did not purchase the product in a store somewhere? And so I think it's about considering.
Is there a point there that the attribution is still a broken model? Like we were talking about various parts of the funnel, upper, middle, and lower. I mean, are we still not measuring this properly? I mean, we're still sort of wedded to archaic attribution systems.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding that attribution is imperfect, right? And so the idea is that you want to measure what you can, try not to over or undervalue that. But the moment you start saying, for instance, that this one thing is indicative, is the key performance indicator for me driving business with online ads, especially if it's not something that is transacted upon online typically, that's extraordinarily dangerous for that brand, because they could be following a completely divergent path that's going to eliminate their ability to actually see any effectiveness out of it.
And I'm curious about how do you approach the attribution piece? I mean, do you sort of model it as per client in a bespoke way, or do you have like a sort of like a process within the agency itself?
If the client wants to do fractional attribution, we'll partner with a fractional attribution partner. If they're considering fractional attribution, I often talk them out of it, talk about successes that we've seen without adopting fractional attribution. I like to use a baseball metaphor, saying,
baseball is good today.
So, they might count walks in your on-base percentage, but nobody is fractionalizing the runs across all the batters, because it's not the best way to do it. It's a super complicated way to say, is this player helping the team or not? And that's really what you want to do with your ads, is you can figure out if they're helping the team, if they're driving visitation, if people are seeing them.
Do you marry a lot of offline activity? I mean, Brian was on about how many sales are actually done in store as opposed to online.
Yeah. To get back to that sort of mid-funnel idea, if I have like a big national advertiser that doesn't have a lot of sales feedback, the place I try to dig in is a product launch. That's when marketers' butts are on the line, and where the company is going to be looking at short-term results. And that's where you can prove that when you say making an impact, that it actually does make an impact to you, the marketer.
And has your clients sort of moved with this? Are they seeing the opportunities of this in terms of this could actually work better? We can measure, we can see the value of spending all that money in TV on branding.
Yeah, about 10% of clients are on board, are seeing it. Anyone who wants to can. You don't need a great trading desk like HX. I think even the one you work with maybe can. Woo! But
spicy.
You just have to be scientific. You have to say, what are we trying to do here? What are our KPIs? How are we going to validate these KPIs? And can we use the scientific method to compare what would happen if we didn't run these ads to actually running the ads? And you'll get there.
So is there any Sorry, go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, there are other techniques you can use, by actually just extracting value from the data and looking at it as well, and running your own testing on the uplift as well. One of the examples of that is one of the things that we do, which is looking at exposed versus non-exposed users on the campaign, and looking at how their behaviours and their emotions, or in our particular case, it's search behaviours, how that's really changed from actually in real time from seeing, being exposed to different types of advertising and seeing actually what happens then to then inform the campaign in real time. And that's kind of us. That was kind of us taking attribution into our own hands a little bit, in the sense that there is flawed models within the industry. There's continual comparison with DR metrics, which is just totally mental. Yeah. And we have to try and show the efficacy of our campaigns as much as possible. But I mean, I'm sure there's many other ways. But we just look at what we have.
And is there any use cases of clients doing this really well? I mean, I could talk about a specific example. Maybe Adam, you can maybe talk about one client who's actually looks at this and has applied it in a sort of real world sense and is actually seeing real benefit effectively.
Yeah, I love the Kroger's example that Brian showed. They're not my client, but one of our top clients is CarMax, who's done a lot of lift testing and has a lot of regional concerns, and they're a good example of someone who's starting to look at the ability to push visitation, to push awareness in markets that they're first moving into, to understand 6 months and 12-month rollouts, right, from launch to result, and this need to flexibly feed different markets according to how many cars are unsold on the lot at a given time.
I mean, I talk about from a client perspective, Tyler, connecting those dots, the CRM, the analytics, and what do you think the relationship between the agency and the client is changing and changing for the better in terms of being able to kind of plug into all those pieces and making actually a better brand effectively and have longevity?
I do. I think there's still a pretty substantial challenge for brands, consumer brands especially, that don't own their entire distribution chain, right? They don't own the point of sale, but we've had success even using the Nielsen Catalina solutions of the world or the DLXs to at least understand directionally what's working and what isn't. And I think that however imperfect that type of measurement is, the clients that have been willing to embrace something that is undoubtedly more scientific than just going with their gut, those are the ones that have really evolved, and I think we've seen multiple examples of that with Johnson & Johnson, BMW, Coca-Cola. So I think that there are positive signs for us moving in the right direction as an industry.
Adam, do you think your relationship is changing with your clients? I mean, evolving rather than changing, in the sense that you're getting deeper into the business, because there seems to be a lot of new startup type of agency business or consultancy business that are closer to the client, and obviously you being an established player in the market and one of the biggest players. Do you think that relationship's evolved?
Yeah, definitely. There's themes of consolidation across the different functions that the agency is providing. And there's, I think, more pressing, that's relatively easy, though it's still painful to consolidate departments. Like Horizon does video, it's across TV and digital video is one department. But the harder one is talent. Like if the agency is playing a consulting role, whereas media buying 10 years ago, 20 years ago was mostly executional, then you have to pay people more. There's a different skill set, and there's still a lot of margin pressure in the industry. And it's unclear how that one's going to shake out if the agencies continue to own service, when there has to be such a deep skill set, if clients pay more for it, or if that moves somewhere else.
Would that be a function within the company itself, or is that a new business effectively, or could you see? Yeah. Can you see agencies evolving that model?
Yeah, definitely. The digital agencies do. I come from a digital agency, and it was very much like a little McKinsey. They would try to tell people how to adapt to this huge change in the marketplace, even though we were all 25 years old. It was cute, but Now you see clients actually hiring McKinsey to help them with this and paying millions of dollars for it. So it is a real business, and definitely the bigger agencies are getting into it. But it's to the client, for media agency, charging $2 million for a deck seems weird.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the real value that some of these agency holding companies, are certainly smaller, more boutique groups like Adam when he was 25 can offer, is that they can come in with a knowledge of the marketplace. They can understand what the client is trying to do with their business, and they can translate that and get them thinking about things the right way and put the broad architecture into place. I also agree that that's a big change in terms of how marketers that have been around for 50, 100 years are used to working with and compensating an agency, and that it's going to be a painful period of trying to figure out how we address that commercially. I also, just to comment on the McKinseys and the Deloittes of the world getting into this business, I do think that they their orientation and their relationship with some of these clients allows them to come in such a way that is perhaps new to an agency, but they also don't have the hands-on domain expertise that reside within the four walls.
The execution piece, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just about the execution, but seeing how it's executed and being able to factor that into your understanding of it. So even if you're not talking about the actual execution, if you don't know how a programmatic campaign actually comes to life and you haven't witnessed or experienced that firsthand, it's hard to understand the intricacies of that when you're formulating your approach to it.
Dom, the vendor relationship obviously is evolving as well. So I'm just curious to see, I mean, if the agency's relationship changes with the marketer, how do you sort of fit into that, like going
We're
forward?
friends with everyone.
Oh, yeah. You like Switzerland. Yeah, friends with everybody, yeah?
No, we definitely are. We are a specialist in our technology and the data that we have, and what we would say is that we're completely agency facing, and that enables us to build our model to work with the way that training desks and the way that planning teams work. They both work differently. We're positioned more with Trading Desk as a technology provider, and we have different types of integration that we can have for self-serve and audience creation, perhaps, and insights that are automated through API, etc. There's all sorts of ways that Trading Desk can integrate with a vendor or a partner like us. But for the planning teams, we simply just a data-enriched media play.
Gentlemen, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for your insight. Round of applause, please, for our panel. Thank you very much.